Europe is home to a large variety of theme parks. Some have some incredibly unique coasters, whilst others are, well, different. But with all these different parks, which could be described as the best one? That's why we'll be looking at what I think is the best theme park in all of Europe, and that being Germany's Europa Park. Make sure to keep watching because there's something quite obvious which the park is still missing that I'll be talking about too. Before we talk about that, the park has 12 currently operating coasters, since Alpine Express, a Mack-powered family coaster, got lost in a fire that spread across the park's Spanish-themed area earlier this year. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because I've got much more content on the way. Anyways, back to the coasters. I'd say that the park's best coaster is probably Woodan Timber Coaster. This is one of the few rides not built by Mack, which owns the park, and is the largest GCI ever built. The layout definitely keeps its pacing well and interacts brilliantly with the other rides at the park, like this airtime hill over the first drop of Atlantica Super Splash. Woodan is also backed with another two amazing coasters, Silver Star and Blue Fire Mega Coaster, which was actually Mack's prototype launch coaster. For both of these coasters, I'd say that while the coaster's standalone layout might not be the best, it's the way the rides are presented and themed which really makes them an overall package. And this actually moves me on to my problem, which is that standout coaster the park is missing, that could compete with Europe's best. But don't worry, Mack have already found a solution. That being with Voltron. Like what I've spoken about in a previous video, next year a new Striker coaster will be opening at the park, together with an all-new Croatian themed area. The unique beyond vertical launch, turntable, 7 inversions and long layout will definitely give the coaster itself a one-up over the other coasters at the park. And like all the other coasters at Europa Park, this will come with some incredible theming, so it sure looks like Mack have a new world-class coaster on their hands. Obviously, we're not going to talk about each of the park's attractions, so instead, let's talk about something they all have in common, and that's their attention to detail. Even though Europa Park might be huge, every ride, whether it's an e-ticket or not, is themed to the roof. Take the Swiss themed area of the park and that small wild mouse coaster known as Matterhorn Blitz. Instead of the park just adding a plain wild mouse coaster, the layout's elevator lift, steep drop, unique layout and theme make it much more interesting and special than the commonly found plain wild mouse coasters. Now that we've already talked about the smaller rides, the park's most impressive dark ride is easily Pirates in Batavia. Clearly inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride setting in Indonesia makes it stand out from the original. Pirates in Batavia opened back in 1987, but burned down in 2018. In less than 2 years, Europa Park completely rebuilt the attraction, with many updated scenes which also included new effects and animatronics. And speaking of updating attractions, the park is always looking to update its more outdated rides. An older dark ride known as Universe of Energy was updated to this. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name, but the theme is all about a granny cellar which has changed into a dinosaur breeding farm, which is definitely an upgrade from its older theme, which was a clear inspiration from Epcot. Josefina's Magical Imperial Journey is another ride which has recently been rethemed. Previously themed to an African-type raft ride, the ride is now themed to a more complete Austrian boat ride, which fits the park European theme far better. It's also why I think that Euromir will be the next coaster to be heavily updated. We still haven't talked about water rides. Europa Park has two main thrilling water rides. Poseidon was the prototype Mack water coaster. This is basically Journey into Atlantis at SeaWorld Orlando on a slightly smaller scale with much more roller coaster elements. In the Portugal themed area of the park, you've also got Atlantica Super Splash, which is another somewhat different type of water coaster which utilizes much larger boats like your traditional splashdowns. Apart from some very mild family water rides, Europa Park also has a lock flume which got lost in a fire, and also fjord rafting in the Scandinavian section of the park, which is by far the best themed rapids I've ever been on. And this is without mentioning the park's unique variety of flat rides, which no matter the size, all have their own separate storyline. With all these hidden details, it really makes you want to ride every ride at the park to make sure you didn't miss anything from the full experience. Ride operations are some of the best at Europa Park, with most waits for some of the bigger rides rarely skipping the 30-minute mark. And even so, why would you even get bored waiting in such an awesome themed queue line? In my opinion, the overall experience that Europa Park offers can be rivaled by any other theme park on the continent. This is without naming all the other seasonal events, on-site hotels, dining locations, and Rulantica, the park's water park. And before the video ends, I'd like to say that practically all the music you've heard in this video was all from Europa Park. Do I really need to say more?